Hey, Jamie,
Sean, I think we're actually live here at Ignite.
welcome.
Thank you to our studio audience for coming out.
That's right. That's right. And so actually, so let's kind of look at what we're here for. We're actually in a like a professional studio. They just camera switched on us.
Yeah, that's
Hi,
pretty
I'm
impressive.
Sean Wilson, and I am the Skype for Business product marketing manager for deployment and operations, manageability, IT Pro, all things interesting.
And my name is Jamie Stark. I look after voice interoperability networking for Skype for Business in the marketing organization. And yeah, we're here live on our normal broadcast, but in a different place from Ignite on the last day of the show floor. Behind us, you may see forklifts and tractors and all sorts of things happening as they're tearing down the show floor at Ignite. But we still have one day left. So if you're actually here in Atlanta, there's still a bunch of great content that we still have ready to deliver on the half day on Friday.
So one of the things you're going to experience today is we've got the professional camera set up, but one of the things that we didn't take into account was how to actually pull the audio from. So what you're actually have is Jamie and I both on our headsets, so there might be a little echo. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was what was Ignite like this year?
Now, Ignite was just fabulous for me this year. I've had just a fantastic time meeting with partners, meeting with customers, and then of course doing a couple of presentations. I was fortunate enough to do a presentation on planning cloud PBX. That was a ton of fun to do. That was yesterday, and then have another session tomorrow on profiles for customers with cloud PBX as well. And I think that you did one on moving to Skype for Business Online, right?
Yeah, I did the session that I did was called Migrating to the Cloud, Skype for Business Online. It was great. We got a great crowd. We had, I think, 500 plus people show up for it. We had a great session that we talked specifically about the meeting migration service, what we're bringing there, of kind of taking it to the next evolution of when you move to the cloud, you got to update all your meeting coordinates. Well, instead of making it available on-prem and you having to run a tool, which we knew users didn't, and then you ended up in a meeting and nobody was in the right place or the coordinates. What we're actually doing is we're baking it into the service with Skype for Business Online and Exchange Online, and we'll automatically do those coordinates with us. And then we also talked about our regionally hosted meetings, right? So we are now going, later this year, we're going to be enabling multinational corporations to be able to home users in different regions. And that's actually going to be pretty cool because it now means we can take care of MNC.
Yeah, absolutely. In the booth, I had lots of conversations with customers specifically around this multinational point. Lots of customers who either are coming from Skype for Business Server and have multiple server deployments and then are looking to go to the cloud, or are in a single tenant today in Office 365 in a single data center and looking to, instead of federating multiple tenants together, looking instead to have that single tenant span multiple data centers. And it's a really, really cool set of technologies that we have coming up there. But I mean, those are just kind of two things that we talked about, from the online stuff. There's a ton more, right? And so I think we can kind of go through a few of the other announcements as well. I'll cover off all the voice stuff, and then we can kind of go through all the things that we're not responsible for. On the voice front, we had a lot of conversations about the auto attendant capability and call queues. We've done broadcasts, out to the world on the auto attendant and the call queue capabilities, and have been talking about it and blogging about it and everything else. That is coming to preview in October. And then I think the biggest news, though, was for the PSTN calling service, that the PSTN calling service is going to be now opening up in preview in France and Spain, planned for October. And that's crazy exciting. So all of these new preview things for Cloud PBX, we want to have everybody participate in. So definitely everyone out there, go out to skypepreview.com and go and check that out, because there's some really, really cool capabilities that we're bringing into play.
One of the things for me that I think is the most interesting about this week is just the sheer amount of stuff we talked about. We launched, or we announced and showed VTC Interop live on stage with Gurdeep as well as the next generation of Skype room systems. Like, we're changing the dynamics of it not just being this really rich client on the PC, but then we also demoed the Mac and like the full screen to screen bleed and like some of our learnings there and why that's so important. I think it was really impressive to see that we are actually delivering on what we promised just a few months ago at EC when we got on stage.
Absolutely. And so that was actually one of the things that customers kept on coming up to me and asking about too. They're saying, oh, I really love the Mac client. Clearly, that's a big step forward from a design perspective. Super interested in what you're doing there. So boy, when are those things going to be on the PC? And they're just kind of, on the one hand, a little surprised, like, oh, you guys are so much further thinking on the Mac. Like, this is certainly a big, change in kind of the way that things have been going with the product in the past. But definitely very interested in seeing how all of those innovations are going to percolate into the PC. We don't have anything to announce at Ignite around that front, but the interest in that was just fantastic. And I think it's a great testament, not just to the quality of the Mac, but the new design elements that were brought into the Mac client. And that's super, super cool.
Yeah, one of the things I think that's important for people to also, like, that aren't here, remember, they can consume this stuff now from the web, right? So one of the things, though, that was interesting is we're covering everything from adoption to like deep 400 level technical, and to that point I'm going to make a put. So there's the MVP community talk booth out on the floor, and one of my favorite parts of the actual like thing was when I walked in and somebody is deep into PowerShell, not like just like we're talking like deep into PowerShell, and it's 45 feet wide by 25 feet deep, and it is sardine packed. Like, it is absolutely crammed, and that really speaks to the level of audience that we've got here. There was not a single easy question in the booth, I think.
Yeah, it was funny. I would get into the booth and I would just start having a conversation with a customer, and then I would instantly get a queue of like 3 or 4 people saying, "Oh, well, geez, hey, I'm glad you're here. Somebody referenced me to you. I have a question about," and it was everything from Office 365 to hybrid to voice to new features to Mac to video interoperability. It was just end to end. All the different questions that were coming up, and it was kind of fun to prosecute them and kind of stay on your toes. And there's just but it was just great. The interest and the energy that was in the booth, I think, just was nonstop. The thing that I kind of felt proud of, I had an opportunity to kind of work in the content space for all the content that we're delivering here at Ignite for Skype. And I felt proud that as questions would come in, 90% of the time I'd say, what, here's the answer, but you can learn a lot more because we have a session about that. We have the sessions about adoption. We have the sessions about the clients. We have sessions about, security and MDM and everything, to your point, 400 level down into, how to deploy with PowerShell and how to do, really, really deep, fairly technical work, both in the server and in the service. And so that felt really good too, that pretty consistently it felt like we were hitting the needs of the folks that are here. But definitely for anyone that's here, for anyone that's watching at home, we always want to get that feedback. I actually start all of my sessions with the slide that's normally at the end that talks about feedback, because it is critical as somebody who kind of deeply thinks through what are the sessions that we should do and what's the mix of level and everything else. It's really important that we get feedback from all the attendees and feedback from folks out on the web who are watching this asynchronously as well, that we hear about. Excuse me. Got a little cough here at Ignite. That we hear about what's going on. We hear about your feedback so we can action it for next year.
It was interesting. I got a chance to attend your session, and I learned actually a lot on you put the evals up front. You promote a lot of the different sessions like throughout your session. One of the things I felt that was the energy that was here was so positive. Literally, you'd walk to partners' booths, you'd go and talk. Like, there was always a good buzz, right? There was a lot of stuff, and the Skype for Business booth, actually, one of the things that impressed me was it was a fairly large space, and we had a constant flow of people, and they asked 400 level questions where we would sit at the Surface Hub and literally be doing whiteboarding sessions that we're then projecting on the Skype room system. And people are watching as, like, you know, our colleague Paul is talking about how the Cloud Connector Edition is actually worked and how it sets up and what on-premise PSTN connectivity looks like for Skype for Business Online. And I felt that that was really important, that there was such a blend of our team and engineering in there and MVPs in the booth working with customers at all levels and making it super interactive. And I thought that that was probably the one thing I took out of this Ignite, that people were genuinely happy to be here to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to all the MVPs that came and helped out in the booth. It was fantastic. Like, I think constantly there are 2 or 3 MVPs at any time who are there talking with customers, talking with us, going through the details. And that was it was such a big help because there was a ton of traffic. It was really outstanding. Yeah. Oh, it's great. So, I think we just kind of touched on a couple of the things that we announced. I think there's even more that was talked about at the session. So, Gurdeep showed off call kit integration for iOS. That's fantastic. So all the Skype for Business client in iOS has just a native experience. So that way, when I'm making calls, when I'm answering calls, when I look at my call log, all of it is very deeply integrated into the native calling experience for iOS. That's just fantastic. Now, that was an early build. We didn't have a version of that running in the booth, but that is planned to be available by the end of the year. And so it's just a really, really neat, set of work that was done on the mobile front.
One of the things for me that I think resonated was, we've had a large on-premises exposure, right? And it was very apparent talking to our big companies and small, and the momentum for them looking to move into Office 365 and move to the cloud. I think this is really the first year that it was kind of a change, right? Like, where people were like, wait, I can get the innovation of broadcast meetings, or I'm going to get the ability to upload my attachments in my meeting invite, and it's going to show up natively in my Skype for Business meeting. Wait a second, that's crazy. And the fact that innovation was going to happen so much faster in the cloud, I think people were finally getting it. People thought the cloud meant I didn't have to manage it, but really the cloud means it's a path to faster innovation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I was really floored by the number of customers who had server, but were just very clear, like, I see that this is the path, and now I need Microsoft to help us figure out how to get there. And, how do we wrap our heads around this transition up to the cloud? And that, I think, is where the Skype operations framework kind of really comes into play. And that was just, there was something that we had launched, back in July at WPC, and now to be able to talk through the Skype operations framework with customers, it was just that was a really, really neat thing to see. Like, yeah, absolutely, we want you to get to the cloud. We want you to get to the cloud at your own pace. And here's a really programmatic way to do so with the highest quality and with a line of sight towards ensuring that that your experience and that your ROI is maximized as much as possible end to end. Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that for me on that one as well, so we actually launched the second element, or the release, in Skype Operations Framework. And this one was cloud migration. So the first one was get deployed, right? Our evergreen people. This one was cloud migration. So it really takes into account things like bandwidth planning as you transition from on-prem to the cloud. It brought in a lot of key things that really a lot of our customers were asking. And I think the key element within Skype Operations Framework, and it was today I spent a lot of time talking to customers, like in meetings, and my number one answer of every single thing was, go get a Skype Operations Framework certified partner. And the reason that I would say that would be, look, it's not that you don't have the technical capacity, right? We're talking companies with 400,000 people. And I'm like, just get the partner, because they're going to help you with that end-to-end methodology. And this is what they do every day, is to help you get there. And they're going to help bring a level of expertise and maybe even some MVPs, right? That are the master.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually got to be in a customer meeting together. That was a great treat. I think it was just an accident that we were both, at the same hotel at the same time. We were messaging each other, and oh, hey, you're here, great. And you got to sit in on a meeting that I had scheduled with the customer. And that was just perfect. Not only did you have a bunch of VTC background that the customer had a lot of interest in, and we talked through that. Demoing broadcast meetings to them. We had 5 minutes at the end, and we threw up a broadcast meetings demo. That was super cool. But they were looking ahead and saying, oh, we're gonna be building out a new office building. We're going to kind of start over from scratch. It's going to be in an open floor plan environment. What are the things that we need to be thinking about, and how can we think through all the different elements necessary in order to make sure that our deployment's successful? Yeah, that was a treat. That was a lot of fun. Had a bunch of great conversations with customers, whether they're in the private meeting rooms spread around here at Ignite, or whether they were down at the booth or after sessions. Just every time, just really appreciative of customers coming up, and even some cases where hey, things weren't working as we expected. Can you tell me, like, if this thing is something that you expect should work in this particular way or not? Sometimes I kind of felt a little bit like a support engineer of going, well, have you tried this? Have you thought about that? But that's why we're out here, and I love just that opportunity to spend a week and just be soaked in the world of our customers. And I personally think it really helps to inform a lot of what we do back in corporate in a kind of our normal roles as product managers.
And that kind of ties back to something we launched actually right before we got here, but we had a big kickoff, and that was the tech communities, right? So aka.ms/SfB community, and in that is really product lifecycle tips and tricks, all the stuff there, but really to bring that community. And what was nice was it was the extension of that down on the floor, right? It was helping our customers understand what they needed to do. It was helping them with their problems. And I think my favorite part of being down there was watching all the different teams engaged with customers. There was no overbalance of one or the other. It was totally integrated, people talking. And so, I think the takeaway that I want to take from Ignite is building a community and making sure that they're part of everything that we're doing is important, and to be able to keep the things like this broadcast going. So look to see kind of some of those updates coming. One of the questions I had for you, Jamie, was the sessions that we're going through. So tomorrow we're talking about usage profiles. There's been a lot of 400 depth. What were some of the real key themes? Like, if you thought about Gurdeep and he set the stage rather than what we released, what was his theme all up, and what do you think that means for people that are listening?
Yeah, absolutely. Gurdeep's theme, end to end, was clearly about moving to Skype for Business Online today. Like, that was literally the title of his conversation, and the beginning of his talk. And so every element of his dialogue was absolutely about, how can we make sure that you can move up to Office 365 and Skype for Business Online immediately? And that really resonated in the conversations I was having with customers. They weren't asking about, oh, how do I think about upgrading my Link Server 2010? They were very much like, I know I need to get to the cloud. I know I want to get to the cloud. Here are the things that I think I need to think about. Are there any other elements there? And that was very much the core thrust of our content. Yeah, we had content that spanned server and service. Yeah, we had some content that was specifically focused on server, but I'd say 90% of it was very much aligned around what are we doing in the cloud? How can customers take advantage of it? And what are the opportunities that are there once you get to the cloud? For example, one of the features that we haven't talked about yet that was demonstrated by Gurdeep that is near and dear to our hearts for broadcast meetings is the ability to do transcription and then translation of broadcast. Yeah, no, it's absolutely.
What you don't know is it's live on this broadcast.
No way! I can't believe I can't believe you did that. No way!
I had to, and I'm hoping it's working. I set it up. I did the checkbox. Bottom right hand corner has, because this is dog food. Bottom right hand corner has the closed captioning there. You should be able to turn it on if it's there. But I wanted to surprise you with it. I didn't think I was going to tell you. I think the best part about that was the moment that we pulled over to the Kurt Koenigsbauer broadcast, he doing his session at the exact same time, and we translated it into Klingon. The thing about that translation that blows me away, and I'm going to ask you to correct it for me. So it's input in how many and output in how many?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about this process, let's just first kind of talk about the process end to end. So as we're talking, our audio is getting transmitted up to Azure Media Services, and Azure is then taking that audio and video, combining it together, and re-encoding it in a variety of formats dependent upon the device that you're connecting to the broadcast with. And so within that, we have the opportunity to then take the audio information and convert it into text. Now, I believe that today we're only supporting that input in English, but the intent is to have that be supported in 4 languages. So I want to say it was English, Spanish, German, and Chinese. And so that would be that would be the initially, folks, right, yeah, initially. So those would be the folks that would be like us that are on the broadcast and that are talking. They're talking out to users, and then that gets transcribed, and then that transcription ultimately, by the time we go into general availability, will be in 50 languages. So you can imagine, yeah, yes.
50 languages?
50 languages, right? Because at that point, once we've done the automatic speech recognition, once we've taken the phonemes and the audio data and turn that into text, well, then you have the opportunity to make that go from text to text. And that translation is actually something that we've done on Bing for a very long time. Like, that's a fairly straightforward, even with context and everything else, that is a fairly straightforward activity to do. It's much more difficult to do language independent speech recognition, where you go from my voice into text. And so yeah, you can imagine having cases where somebody is doing a broadcast in Spanish and you're reading it in Cantonese, or they're doing a broadcast in German and I'm reading it in English. And actually, we tested this out. I'm impressed you surprised me on this, but we did test this out internally prior to coming to Ignite. We did an internal broadcast, let our field and folks know about about all the different announcements, what we're doing, our plans for Ignite. And I got some feedback from folks in the field who were going, it was really a treat to be able to hear you in English and then read you in German. Like, that was an incredible, and that, personally, I feel so proud when we have technologies like that, because it really does point, just straight into Microsoft's core value proposition of like that we can improve the businesses and the lives of everybody around the world, and language can be one of those barriers. And so the more barriers around language that we can drop away, man, that is tremendous possibilities, not just in business, but just generally, for goodness and everything else around the world. It's so exciting. And yeah, there's already so much magic in Skype Meeting Broadcast, and then to have this as well is fantastic.
I spent probably a third of my time when I was in the booth, or even talking to customers about broadcast, and not talking about broadcast meetings in the sense that, great, you've got it. They were like, wait, this is in my E-SKUs, like E1, I have capability. And I had a guy come up to me and he said, hey, we're an event management company, and so we do this for our customers. And I'm like, oh, great. So he's going to use Skype broadcasts. No, he wanted to get his customers onto Office 365 so that they could do their all hands, they could do their events and do it all through Skype Meeting Broadcast. And, so Skype Meeting Broadcast and the translation thing was a real treat for me. One of the things for me that sits near and dear is VTC, right? And video conferencing. I'm a big nerd. I go back to the days of H320 and, let's go pull some ISDN lines in, but my opportunity to talk to customers who had 2 frames of mind. One was, hey, how do I get these VTC systems in? And we're doing that with the video interop. The other was, I've got these old rooms. They're set up for audio and they've got display, but I got to get rid of the old VTC. It's too hard. It's too cumbersome. I don't want to do it. And that's where we had the great conversations about Rigel, about what was formerly Project Rigel, now next generation Skype room systems, and really how we were able to show them that they could have a 1080p video experience with center of room control starting at under 2K.
Yeah, and it's just absolutely fantastic. That whole area of the booth was constantly buzzing. There was always just an incredible amount of activity, and it was around both elements as you described, talking about the great capabilities there with the next generation of Skype room systems, where I can plug it into whatever projector or screen or whatever the case I may have, scaling from the very small kind of huddle rooms all the way up into big kind of executive boardrooms. Skype room systems has solutions all across that line, and it's just it's absolutely fantastic. Plus, they're coming to market with 3 different partners. So we had Logitech, we had a device from Logitech there at the booth. We also had devices from Crestron and Polycom, and all of them have a kind of different spin and a different way to kind of think through the dock, the center of the room experience, to think through the peripherals there. And so there's just a tremendous amount of choice for customers, but in every single case, a fantastic Skype experience that gets me right into the meeting, that puts content front and center, that has a tremendous video experience. And it just resonated with customers. And then very quickly they're like, oh, but can I use this with my existing screens, my existing projector? Yes, absolutely. No question. Can I use this with my existing VTCs? Totally. Let's talk about the investments that Polycom is making in Azure and Office 365 with Real Connect. And that was fantastic. Yeah, very much so.
So one of the things that I think we're probably coming pretty close. It has been an amazing week here at Ignite. I would say for the team, I want to put props out to the team that you don't see on camera, from Delonda and Angela and Paul and Praveen and James, that have all really helped us throughout this, as well as Ben helping us pull this all together in the background, who's producing it. But the big thing I want to say is, it takes a village to pull this stuff off. And, we say the sound of forklifts and duct tape, we're literally listening to it right now. But it's kind of a bittersweet moment, because it means that, the floor's closing. We're about to end this wonderful week, but at the same time, it's a little reprieve for us. So I want to kind of give a shout out to all of our customers here and that didn't make it, that really have been here to support both Jamie and I throughout the year, and our team throughout this process. So
2 things I want to say about customers. One is that we actually had customers coming out and presenting at Ignite as well. We had Accenture, we had Kelly Services, we had Cushman and Wakefield, all presenting about their Skype for Business stories here at Ignite. And I want to give a shout out to them. Really appreciate that work. Really appreciate them coming out and spending time and doing that. That's not something that generally is their that's not their day job. That's not an easy thing to do, to stand in front of the bright lights and present on a big stage. But I just really appreciate them doing that and coming out.
Yeah, I want to add one to that. Air Canada, who actually came out. They came out, actually we had 2. We had Air Canada that came out and presented on our adoption session. It's called Creating Raving Fans, and they've done some great innovative stuff, actually using SharePoint based on Persona to surface up content for them. So flight attendants don't get a desktop app presented. The other thing though is we actually had our very first preview customer for multi-region support, for the regionally hosted meetings, actually come up on stage and tell us that it really was as easy, and the performance was there. So that was kind of nice.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a perfect, I'm jealous that you actually were able to pull up a customer right there. And then the other shout out that I want to give is we had a lot of folks who came up to us, or at least this was my experience. A lot of folks came up to me saying, I love your broadcast. I've seen it. I've been watching you. It's completely embarrassing to have that happen, but consistently it feels like folks have been watching. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. And a beginning value out of the broadcasts we've been doing. And so we kind of talked about our last broadcast a little bit. Love to be able to get that feedback in the tech communities. Love to be able to hear, more. I was joking actually on Twitter with some MVPs about if they want to go more technical, and they all said yes. And so I said that you can break out your 400 lever ladder diagrams, and you can talk through ladder diagrams with MNC support. So I really look forward to seeing that, Sean, on a future broadcast. And yeah, it's just it's such a treat to be able to see folks coming out and coming up to us and saying, hey, we really dig what you guys are doing. The last person that did so actually said, hey, it puts a more human face on Microsoft, and it really shows a lot of transparency. And frankly, that's one of our goals here, very explicitly, is that, we're product managers. We love our product. We love talking about it. And we want to be able to share all this great stuff with our customers, with the community.
Well, I think with that, I think it's time for us to call it a day, say goodnight to the virtual audience, and the laugh track in the background, or clap track or whatever it is. But Sean Wilson and Jamie Stark, we're signing off. Hey, thanks for joining us at Ignite, and we'll catch up with you later.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming out.